Marcus phoned the day after to give his personal assurance that it would be sorted out. And he said, of course we have insurance. Which now seems like the alarm bell should have been ringing at that point. Paul now feels like Marcus has saved his number, and whenever it phones, Marcus goes, oh, bloody hell, it's that Paul again. Better not answer that one. Just let it ring, guys, let it ring. Your call is important to us. Your call is in a queue. We are experiencing a higher than average number of calls right now. Afternoon. Firstly, apologies for the slightly strange video angle. I've left my phone mount, the one I always use, in the Mercedes-Benz CLS. So we're in the BMW, but I've got my phone balanced on my wallet, which is empty, obviously. Right, let's talk about Paul Walker. Not Paul Walker from Fast and Furious. This is Paul Walker, who's furious and flooded. See what I did there? Paul owns a Jaguar that was at the dealership that has just been flooded. I want to talk about his situation and where we're at. Before I dive into Paul's story, have a little look at this post. I'll put it there. Someone is saying that all of the Defenders, the Land Rover Defenders, the expensive showroom cars, had been moved. Normally at Inchcape, the showroom cars, the expensive Defenders, would be parked in that red bit there that they're showing. They're not there. Who moved all of the Defenders? Secondly, I've had this anonymous message. The site are aware that they are on floodland. I'm an ex-staff member, and it was only last year we were moving cars to high ground for fear of the flood defence failing. It's flooded 3 times in as many years. It was only a matter of time before this happened. Inchcape are fine. They are insured, and it's actually a good day at the office when the insurance company buys all your cars. That's an interesting point. And lastly, on my 3 points before I go into Paul Walker, not from Fast and Furious, but Furious and Flooded, morality. Paul said there's a moral obligation on Inchcape, for example, to not sack all the staff. So it would be morally unacceptable for Inchcape to just sack all the staff. They'll instead find other dealerships for them to work in. But morals don't really come into it with the way that these people are being treated. So Paul Walker, not from Fast and Furious, Furious and Flooded, is one of 146 customers who had cars on site at the time of the flood. Paul owns a Jaguar I-Pace. Now, I'm quite happy to rein my neck back in and say maybe I overdid it in the last video with saying that Jaguar Land Rover owners are all rich and it's kind of okay because they've all got the money. Not that I said that, but I think a lot of people are thinking it. And if you listen to the BBC News and the local radio coverage, they kind of make it out like it's okay because these are Jaguar Land Rover customers and surely they've all got millions of pounds and can just go buy another car and it's fine that their car has been destroyed and nobody is taking liability for it. However, that's not the case. Paul Walker. Paul has a disabled wife with a broken back. They have a Mini as a second car, but the wife can't get in the Mini. So Paul previously had a Jaguar F-Pace, which is the big SUV. But because of his wife's broken back, she was struggling to get up into the F-Pace. So they traded it in and got an I-Pace. Now, Paul's wife has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which Paul did explain it on the phone earlier on, and I kind of understood it, but basically it's not good. He said, the reason we drive Jags is because we don't holiday. We spend the money instead on a nice car. Paul himself had a motorbike accident and he hasn't worked for a while. He said since 2019, the furthest his wife has been is to hospital and back. She's not been out the house properly since then. The F-Pace was getting tricky to get in and out of, but the I-Pace made sense. So, as their one sort of luxury, as their one treat to themselves, he used the equity that he had in the F-Pace that his wife was struggling to get into to get them both into a nice, luxurious car that she could climb into because it was lower. So it was like a treat. He said, we don't have holidays. For what some people spend on holidays, they were spending it on their car because when he needs to take his wife somewhere, he's got something nice to take her around in. And I get that. I get that. They buy it brand new, trading in the F-Pace. In January 2022, it was £76,000. It's a HSE Black Edition. Dealer discounted it to 73, but it's done less than 5,000 miles to this point, the flood point. Car's gone, car's underwater, okay? In July, so he bought it in January. In July, there was a recall after a car transporter went up in smoke that had 6 or 7 iPaces on it. That's when there was this big recall from Jaguar due to fire risk on the iPace. The advice was, don't charge the iPace fully and don't park your car close to buildings. And I said to him, wasn't that a bit of a scary email to get from Jaguar? Oh, by the way, you know this car that you've bought, just don't park it near to anything. That's not a nice email or phone call to be getting. So there were 2 choices at that point. Do the update yourself or take it to the dealer for an update. And he was told that it was the traction battery module. And he just thought, oh, traction battery module must be a little module just like that with a few wires on it. And I thought the same, but it's not. It's the entire battery. He said he called Jaguar Assist and they said, I wouldn't drive it. Don't drive it. Do you remember that I did the video about there was one that went up outside a gym when it was charging? What Jaguar did was they did a software update which effectively restricted the battery on affected cars so that it would only charge to 72%. So the car would recognize if there was a problem and it would go, oh, we've got an issue here with the traction battery module. We better not charge past 72%. Now, Paul reckons, and I'm kind of with him on this, it was only meant to apply to affected cars. But what actually happened was it seemed like every Jaguar I-Pace then wouldn't charge past 72%. He goes to Jaguar and Jaguar say, we're not really dealing with any of this stuff. Speak to the dealer. So he drove it to Inchcape at the end of July, start of August, and they said we can book it in for an inspection on the 14th of August. Then he's told that his iPace, that's only 6 months old, has major problems and we're going to have to order parts. So you can leave it here and get a taxi home because we haven't got a car for you, or you can risk it for a biscuit and we'll have you back in when we can get the parts. So he drives the car home. However, he wanted to get to his son's 30th birthday party, which was 110 miles away, and he knew that on a full charge he could do that there and back, 240 miles out of the iPace. But if he can't charge the car to 100%, then he can't charge it up enough to get there and back because he can't charge at his son's place. Jaguar Inchcape came and picked the car up and they left him with a courtesy car. So that's it. The iPace is now at the dealer. It's only done around 5,000 miles and Paul is now in a courtesy car. This is July, August. From this point, I get irregular updates, he says, but I have to chase the insurance as initially the rental car was only insured for a week. It eventually gets sorted out and then the storm hits. 2 days after the storm, on the Sunday, I'm told that the car has possibly drowned, but there will be an official email coming out. Next, we get an email from Marcus Jones, who's head of business, that said to inform your insurance and let them know that it's been involved in an incident. I emailed back saying I'm not happy with that, as the car was in their care at the time, and it was only there due to a manufacturing error, i.e. the recall, the fires, the lorry, remember? And I wasn't happy that it had been there since August. Marcus phoned the day after to give his personal assurance that it would be sorted out. And he said, of course we have insurance. Which now seems like the alarm bell should have been ringing at that point. I said it had flooded in 2019, and I knew that because I'd taken a car to the old premises. So Marcus said that there were tunnels underneath the dealership that could be switched on and off as and when they needed. And Paul recalls that Marcus said that the flood tunnels were overwhelmed and not big enough, and didn't take into account the floodgates down the road would be closed and the dealership would therefore be overwhelmed by water. It was a half an hour phone call and he gave a phone number to give him a call if needs be. So basically, Paul felt like he was getting some sort of special treatment because he'd had 5 cars from Jaguar and they would have known about his situation with his disabled wife and the fact that Paul is not working due to an injury as well. Paul had a motorbike accident, which is another story in and of itself. So Paul and his wife, they've been dealt some cards in life at the minute. Let's put it that way. Everybody gets dealt cards in life. We know this. Paul's been dealt some cards. So he said, look, I've been going there for 19 years. I've had 5 cars from them. So yeah, 2 decades Paul's been dealing with Inchcape. On Thursday, he gets another templated email and he's then promised an email every Thursday to update you. We will update you every Thursday on the situation, which did happen for the first 3 Thursdays. It said, contact this address, but there was no address. And the email was from a do not reply. I then emailed another address, he says, and there was no response. I emailed another one, and then got in touch with a chap called Richard, and there was no response to that either. So 3 or 4 days later, I emailed Richard and said, Richard said, I will see what we can do about getting you a response. So there's basically, you've got nowhere to go at this point. Paul's hitting brick walls everywhere. He gets a third templated email that comes out saying, please contact your own insurance and pass the details to Sedgwick. So Sedgwick are this company that is allegedly handling all the claims. We're now dealing with Sedgwick, so only deal with Sedgwick from on, and there's an email and a phone number. To which he gets no response whatsoever. Marcus's phone is now just ringing out. This is Marcus who gave him the special treatment. Paul now feels like Marcus has saved his number, and whenever it phones, Marcus goes, oh bloody hell, it's that Paul again, better not answer that one. Just let it ring, guys, let it ring. That's what's going on. So there's no way of contacting the dealer at this point. Paul then gets a phone call from Sam in the sales department, and basically says, we're very sorry, but Sedgwick are dealing with everything. Paul says to Sam, what am I going to do about the gap in the equity? He traded in an iPace that he had 13, 14 grand equity in. The iPace was 73 grand. He owes 43 grand on it, but the market is now saying, because values have come down, that it could be worth anywhere between 38 and 43,000 pounds. So there's a big wedge of money that Paul is going to be out of pocket, even if an insurance company pays out. She says to him, what you need to do is phone Jaguar customer care. So he did. They said, we're afraid it's down to the dealer, not Jaguar, despite the fact that the battery was faulty and that was made by Jaguar, and it was recalled and was at the dealer because of the recall, because of the faulty manufacturer. Jaguar say, nah, nothing to do with us. Jaguar say, if you don't get on well with the dealer, go through the ombudsman if you have a grievance with Jaguar Land Rover. So it's not customer care, it's customer don't care. They then say, what about, have you got motor legal expenses cover? Why not pursue a legal avenue through that? He said he'd already informed his insurer, and customer care pushed him away, so he tried Sedgwick on the phone. A 20-minute wait later, your call is important to us. Your call is in a queue. We are experiencing a higher than average number of calls right now. He finally gets to speak to them, and regardless of how long it had been at the dealership or why it was at the dealership, Inchcape Jaguar are not accepting liability. You have got to go to your insurance and tell them that, say Sedgwick, who sound lovely. So he says, the dealer dismissed me and told me to go to Jaguar customer care. They said to speak to the dealer said to speak to Sedgwick, and Sedgwick said go to your insurer. So he's been paying all this money for this Jaguar, which he hasn't actually had since late July, early August. He then phoned Direct Line to speak about the gap in the values, as I said, and the motor legal, and they said manufacturer faults are not covered for legal expenses. So he's paid extra money for that, and he says it's not worth a pinch of salt. She said, do you want to start a claim? This is on his own insurance. If you don't, then you're going to be out of pocket. He then goes back to Sedgwick to find out the policy details for which he's claiming, and the lady at Sedgwick began treating me like an idiot for asking. The lady at Sedgwick says there aren't any liable insurers because there is no liability. So you can't have the details for who the dealership was insured with because they haven't done anything wrong. Now, when you have a crash out and about, the first thing you do is exchange insurance details. So I know who you're insured with and you know who I'm insured with, and then the insurers can fight it out. What I don't do is say, no, you're not having any of my information because I haven't done anything wrong. I think that would be illegal. So, no liability. Fast forward, the car is definitely going to be a write-off because it's probably been up to its shoulders in water. Inchcape have allegedly told him that because they already know, because they've had assessors out with hazmat suits on. Did they? I feel like there would have been photos of that if that had happened. He then logs a claim and he's told the assessors will be in touch, and a nice gentleman from Leeds finally gets in touch, says it's going to be a write-off and will come back to him with a price. So he's not yet had his market valuation at this point. He says, I'm not rich, I've been on sick pay for 18 months, my wife couldn't have an operation that she needed that AXA refused to pay for, AXA insurance. So Paul's already been on the wrong side of insurance companies for this. It was a £16,500 operation, and they didn't do it. They didn't pay for it because they couldn't. So how's he going to find 11, 12, 15,000 pounds to pay off the gap in the finance when his insurance company finally comes back and says your iPace is only worth 20 grand. It's really difficult. And that's the point where Paul said to me, well, there's a difference here between the personal impact and the business impact. Yes, there's a business impact for Inchcape, but it's different to the actual personal real world stuff. And that's when we got chatting about the fact that they won't just sack all the staff, because that would be immoral. But morals don't seem to have ever come into any of this. Businesses in these sort of situations, they never seem to think about their moral obligation. It's only ever about profit and shareholders and money, isn't it? Money versus morals, profit over people. And I said to Paul, what was the mileage on the iPace when it was there? And he says, I've no idea what the mileage was, because the app that he uses to talk to his phone, you know, all these electric cars have got apps that talk to your phone, and I guess modern petrol and diesel cars as well. They've cancelled the account and withdrawn the access, and there's now no car associated with the account on his app. So he opens up his Jaguar app on his phone, and it's like he never owned a car. It's been deleted. So that's Paul's story that I wanted to share with you. Pretty long video to explain all that, but essentially these are real people that have been impacted by this flood. And I felt bad, because when I was joking about a Jaguar iPace that is now probably worth £4, it was Paul's car. And thankfully Paul didn't hate me for saying that, and Paul seems to quite appreciate the fact that I can get his story out there, because he's only getting brick walls from people, and then he's forced to claim on his own insurance policy. So sorry, Paul, for saying your car is only worth £4, and sorry, Paul, for the terrible joke about Fast and Furious, and Flooded. But Paul Walker did say actually the other Paul Walker was named after him, not the other way around. So there we go. That's Paul's story about his flooded Jaguar, and I think we're going to be hearing a few more of these stories as well. We're trying to get owners together. The link to the form, once again, is in the description of the video and in the comments. So please fill it in if you had a car there, and if you want to share your story about your dealings with Inchcape Jaguar, about the flood or otherwise, because it seems to me that they were doing some pretty dodgy stuff and offering some really questionable customer service long before 6 foot of water was involved. Just another dealership that's just fobbing people off. The other thing that we seem to be seeing is, all right, end of the video, last bit. What could possibly be happening is, let's say a Jaguar dealership or any dealership sells a brand new car to a customer for, let's say, £90,000. That car has loads and loads of problems, and the customer goes, do you know what? I've had enough. Don't want this car anymore. And they go, all right, well, we'll buy you out of it and we'll put you in a brand new car. And then they notch up one sale on their new sales thing because they've sold another car. They don't fix the car that comes in part exchange. They just chuck it straight back on the forecourt, and they think, well, if the new owner notices that it's got loads of problems, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. They then sell it, and they notch up a sale for second-hand sales, and then the poor person that's bought it is left with all of these issues that were never resolved for the first person because the car should have been fixed, but it never was, because the goal is profit and sales. So substandard cars are being sold on the forecourt because they're hedging their bets that people either won't notice or won't bother chasing them up when they realise they've bought an absolute pup. At least one other person in the WhatsApp group for the Inchcape Jaguar flood thing is in that exact position. Bought an approved second-hand car that turned out to be a pup. Thank you very much for watching this long video. I'm not anywhere exciting today. Don't really have any scenery or anything for you, but I hope you enjoyed that. And Paul, I appreciate all the time you gave me on the phone. Thank you very much.